There's been some more information released about the U.S. strikes in Iran on Iranian nuclear sites, so I felt like I wanted to make a follow up video to go over what we know right now. The operation was dubbed Midnight Hammer, and in the preceding week, there had been a lot of movement of B 2 Spirit bombers, and this was done intentionally. It was part of a plan to maintain tactical surprise. So, certain ones were flying out to Guam, certain ones to Diego Garcia, and part of the package proceeded to the west as a decoy and a deception effort. And then the main strike package, comprised of 7 B 2 Spirit bombers, proceeded to the east. Once in range, additional assets have already been deployed there. What we know of, there was F-35s running escort, there was the FA-18 Growler, and there was reports on the ground in Iran of wide spectrum frequency jamming, degraded GPS, radio, and cell service. And that was reported by social media users in Iran. And it would seem that there was a massive amount of electronic interference being deployed in order to allow the ingress of the B-2s into Iranian airspace. Now, a lot of talk in the last 2 weeks has been that Israel has air superiority over Iran, and that's always kind of a misleading statement. Air defenses are notoriously very hard to completely eliminate. And most of the time, what you're doing is you're suppressing enemy air defenses. And especially with Israel and the United States, for that matter, utilizing fifth generation stealth aircraft, they have a lot more leeway to be able to operate more freely. But even once systems are degraded, there's always going to be risk threats there. It's one reason that the B 2 Spirit bomber is used, and we didn't use something like the B 52. The B 52 is a great plane. It's been around for decades, and it's going to outlast probably everything in the air right now at this rate. And it is what China looks at from an air nuclear stance as the biggest threat. Why? Because they can carry a boatload of standoff nuclear tipped air launched cruise missiles. But it's not a stealthy fighter at all. It's not a stealthy bomber, and it could certainly be targeted easier than a B 2 Spirit bomber could be. The B 2 right now is the only plane in the U.S. arsenal, and for that matter in the world, that could carry the GBU 57 Moab, the massive ordnance penetrator. A lot of people are confused. Some people are saying, like, did they use the Moab because the Moab has been in popular culture for some time now? No, the Moab is really an anti-personnel denial system. It's not made to be a ground penetrator. GBU 57 was designed specifically for a mission set like this, a conventional targeting of a hardened bunker or nuclear site under the ground. So, the United States conducted strikes on 3 sites, and the main one, the one that's in the news, and if I mispronounce this, apologize, but Fordow, Fordow. There's some discrepancy on how deeply buried this site is. The consensus has been somewhere between 80 to 100 meters. And for the American brethren out there, just think it's not exactly the same, but it's close. A meter is close to a yard. So think of 80 to 100 football fields. For the rest of the world and anybody that's, can understand meters, it's 80 to 100 meters. There's at least one person who has been on site that claims it's at points up to 800 meters deep. Why does that matter? Well, it matters tremendously because the GBU 57 has, at least spec-wise, a penetration rate of about 60 meters. Now, U.S. Systems has traditionally overperformed compared to their spec when you look at the Patriot defense system taking out Russian hypersonic missiles. Whereas it's not advertised having that capability of being able to do so, it still has shown it has been able to intercept them. And I can point to many other things that they have proven to be better than necessarily what the specs say. Having said that, what the specs say is 60, and even if it overperforms that, it's not going to overperform that to the level of 800 meters. Now, kind of the thought process here would be that, because when this comes down and strikes, it's kind of striking, almost perpendicular to the earth, and that they would hit the same kind of location over and over again. So each one is going to penetrate deeper and deeper. According to the release, we used 6 of the GBU 57s at this site. There were 7 B-52s as part of the package, according to this. Each one can carry up to 2 bombs. In theory, they could have had up to 14. Again, this classified information, estimates range somewhere around that we have 30 in our stockpile. We truly don't know. Anybody that does know shouldn't be talking about it. But up to 14 could be utilized. So they were struck between 6:40 and 7:05 Eastern Time. Tomahawk missiles were used to strike the other 2 nuclear sites, which were not as buried or underground hardened. Those were launched from a submarine. I believe it was 400 miles away. Quote me on that, but I believe it was 400 miles away. And I believe, what was the number? I think that would put it at about 60 Tomahawks. This is the largest operational B-2 strike in U.S. history and the second longest mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Here, so this strike package was an integration of 4th gen and 5th gen air assets. Of course, the Growler being a 4th gen, F-35 being 5th gen. You'd have tankers, you'd have other things there. But truly an integrated strike package. As far as accuracy, can the GBU 57 strike the same location over and over again? Are they that accurate? Don't know for sure, but they have shown demo videos where the bomb is targeted a traffic cone. So there's at least a certain level of accuracy with the pilots and with the bomb itself and the systems that they have been able to target fairly precision strikes. Based on satellites, it looks like there's at least 3 crater locations fairly close together, so they weren't necessarily all of them right on top of each other. We have said we have neutralized the site. Iran has claimed that they had already removed all the enriched uranium from the site and all the equipment they could, and that all 3 sites were basically empty. There's also been claims that sites were not destroyed and they're still operational again. At this early, there's going to be a lot of talking heads, a lot of people speaking in absolutes, saying a lot of really dumb stuff, and none of which is going to be known 100%. Or at least the people that should know shouldn't be the ones, talking. We won't know for some time, and it may be even a couple years before we might know something. Exactly to the level of how degraded the nuclear enrichment abilities of Iran is. If they have a bomb in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, we know that this was highly unsuccessful. What comes next? Well, for the people saying, well, Russia's going to get involved, it's going to be a nuclear war, we're in World War III, China's going to get involved. Well, China has a very non-interventionist policy. It's served them very well up to this point. Why would they want to get involved? Yes, they have some need for oil, and 20% of the world's oil flow does go through the Strait of Hormuz. Having said that, again, non-interventionist, last time I know, besides some border skirmishes, was really that conflict they had with Vietnam in the late 70s. Outside of that, they've kind of, kept a non-interventionist, kind of neutral kind of thing, trying to build their own forces up. From their perspective, it's probably a win because the U.S. is now shifting focus back into the Middle East, Not that they've ever left, but there was a strong pivot towards China, towards Southeast Asia, and now that pivot is probably going to be derailed. As it'd be nice to say that these, from an American perspective, that these strikes are it and everything's going to be achieved and we're all going to go home. Truth is, we don't know if that's going to be the case. Right now, as of right now, the Iranian parliament has voted to close down the Strait of Hormuz. And I'm probably mispronouncing that because I mispronounce everything. Live with it. It still has to go through the Iranian National Security Council for final approval. Well, then you can say, how can they do that? U.S. Navy would be able to, yes. Iranians' naval assets are not going to be able to stand up to the United States. But having said that, they don't need big ships. They could be going off, dropping mines, naval mines, off the back of rowboats. So being able to mine that area, being able to use anti-naval ballistic missiles. We've seen the Houthis and the impact they had, even without being able to sink anything, just the impact they had on shipping, because these insurance companies are going to want to raise the rates and nobody's going to want to take that risk, these commercial sailing vessels. So they don't have to sink ships in order to achieve a geopolitical goal. They just have to stop or limit the ships passing through there, commercial ships. And to do that, it doesn't take dominance. It just takes enough to make it not worthwhile financially. So they can do that. There's a lot of their ballistic missiles that don't have the range to strike Israel, but they can strike U.S. bases in the Middle East. So they have that capability. They also have Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and other locations that could make attacks. A lot of that Iranian influence in the area has been broken. The Syrian regime has been toppled. The new regime in Syria is a lot more friendly and reconciliatory to the West. Hezbollah has already kind of stated they weren't going to get involved when it came to Israel. Now, does that mean they're going to get involved now that the United States is involved? We don't know. But they have been getting pounded by Israel now for over a year. So their ability to operate is degraded. The closing of the strait is probably their number one option at the moment. So we'll see kind of how that goes. So I've talked about China. What about Russia? Is Russia going to get involved? Traditionally, no. Right now, we saw it with Armenia when they had their conflict and war with Azerbaijan. Russia didn't get involved directly in that. We've seen it with Syria. That regime was toppled. Russia was not in a position to support them any longer with their conflict in Ukraine. It's highly unlikely Russia's going to get directly involved against Western forces on the side of Iran. They're in their own quagmire. And the idea that they're going to start launching nuclear missiles at the United States and risk retaliatory nuclear strikes, which would come no matter what, the losses on both sides would be astronomical. They're not going to do that based on conventional strikes against Iran. I'm just going to tell you that very few things, I always say never speak matter of fact 100%. It's 100% makes no sense whatsoever why they would do that. Will this convince Iran even stronger that they need some type of nuclear deterrent? Possibly. Will they have the capabilities when this is done to make that happen? Highly unlikely. Iran, what about Pakistan? They have nuclear weapons. Could they give it to Iran? Iran just made a choice of strongly supporting India with their recent conflict with Pakistan. Pakistan is kind of really trying to cozy up to both the United States and China, which have had a long history, not cozying up. They have a very strong alliance there, but they're also, they're nominating Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. So, no, Pakistan's not going to provide them with a nuclear weapon. Doesn't mean they can't potentially still develop one on their own, but it's highly unlikely. So, as it stands right now, Iran's kind of standing alone. Part of their geopolitical history has kind of led to this somewhat. They may get some material support, but it's not going to be overt support. So really, the closing of the strait is going to be their number one choice as far as retaliatory strikes against this. And the second would be attacking U.S. bases, but that would run the risk of even more U.S. involvement. So we won't know till time plays out, but that's kind of where we're at right now. That's kind of what we know. So I wanted to update everybody. Please, if you have not already, like the video, subscribe to my channel. Its main focus is on nuclear war simulation. And sometimes with events like this, I try to talk about it just to dispel some of the nonsense. Last night, I had people I know and family members ask me, are we about to get nuclear bombs rained on us from Russia? No, it's not the case. So I made the video last night, and then this is a follow-up kind of where we're at right now. Thanks, everybody.